Hi guys, what's up? Today we're going to talk about a story. So basically it's a story about the sodium potassium ATPase and the delayed rectifier potassium channel. So let me start the story. So the story goes like this. Once upon a time, God created a cell, right? God created a cell, and in that cell, God allotted the delayed rectifier potassium channel and the sodium potassium ATPase a job. So both of their job was to throw out the positive charge out of the cell. So once upon a time, God created a cell, and in that cell, a channel called delayed potassium rectifier channel, and the next sodium potassium ATPase. Both of them were allotted a job. The common job was to throw the positive charge out of the cell. So when they throw the positive charge out of the cell, what happens is the cell will be more negative. All right. So out of it, there's two people. Sodium potassium ATPase was a little bit more wiser. This was more wiser than this delayed rectifier potassium channel. And the only thing the delayed potassium rectifier channel could do was to throw out the potassium out. Right? It only could throw the potassium out of the cell. So without any ado, the delayed rectifier potassium channel started to throw out the potassium out of the cell. So it started its job. And sodium potassium channel, sodium potassium ATPase, being a little bit wiser, he was at first looking. So he was, he was understanding the scenario. So, and without any ado, this channel, delayed rectifier potassium channel, started its job to throw out the potassium out. So their job was to throw all the positive charge outside the cell, right? So this delayed rectifier potassium channel started its job, and sodium potassium ATPase was seeing that, right? And sodium potassium ATPase knew that the potassium which the delayed rectifier potassium channel was throwing out, it's actually needed more inside the cell, because if it goes outside the cell, it would be more toxic to other environment or to other cells, and it is also needed for next time. So it's better to keep the potassium inside the cell. So sodium potassium ATPase was more wiser, and he thought, and he told to delayed potassium rectifier channel that, hey channel, can we have a deal? And he said, what? Actually, potassium, what you are throwing out, that is more important to keep inside the cell. So let's do it. I'd like to keep the potassium inside the cell. And this delayed rectifier potassium channel, which was not more wise, he told that I'm doing this job with all my effort, and you're telling that to keep it inside again. That's not going to happen. And now sodium potassium ATPase was now in dilemma, and he again asked the channel to make a deal. So let's make a deal. So your job is also to throw the positive charge, and my job is also to throw the positive charge. So we're here to perform the same goal. So let me put that two of your charges inside, two of your positive charge inside, and instead of two positive charges that I draw in, which you have thrown out, I will send 3 of the positive charge. So it means whatever you have done, I've drawn that 2 of them inside, and instead of that, I've given 3 of them. So it's like I'm also helping by giving one extra positive charge outside of the cell, by taking one extra positive charge outside of the cell, and at the same time I'm conserving the potassium. So now the delayed potassium rectifier channels was like, okay, that's good. That seems legit. So okay, I'm also doing my job and you will do job. But the main goal of our is, let's not let the positive charge remain inside the cell. So with that deal, both of them started working. So this potassium channel started throwing out, kept continuing that job of throwing potassium outside the cell, and this sodium potassium ATPase started drawing in the 2 potassium charges in the cell, and for every 2 potassium charges it draws in, it is throwing out 3 positive charges, right? Because it knew sodium is not that much needed inside the cell, so it's better when it remains outside the cell. So with that deal, they continued, and they continued their job till they threw all the positive charge, and they continued till the inside of the cell became minus 90 millivolt, because they were allotted the job that to maintain the negativity inside the cell, that is minus 90 millivolt. Now, once the inside the cell it became minus 90 by throwing all the positive charges out, now the delayed rectifier potassium channels tells, okay, we're done, let's stop now. And now the delayed potassium rectifier channel stops. But as you know, this sodium potassium ATPase is a little bit wiser. So, and it thinks, okay, there are more potassium outside still, so why not to draw more potassium in again? So even if it stops, it keeps on drawing the potassium inside the cell. So if I make a graph here, suppose this is the graph of the action potential, right? And I don't like to make all the parts of the action potential here. I will only draw the repolarization phase of the graph. So suppose this is your repolarization phase of the graph. So this happens to be the phase 3 in your action potential in the cardiac muscles, right? So this is the repolarization phase of the graph, right? So from here, they planned, both of them planned to throw out the positive charge, right? So they threw out the positive charge and they came here till it became minus 90 millivolt. So they have achieved the goal. But sodium potassium ATPase is wiser. You see, during this whole repolarization phase, both of them are working. The potassium delayed rectifier potassium channel is also working, and at the same time, the sodium and potassium ATPase is also working. So these two are working together, right, for repolarization of the cell. Now, as I already told, this sodium potassium ATPase is a little bit more wiser. So it again keeps on pulling this potassium inside the cell, and if it continues to pull all the potassium inside the cell, even if it has reached minus 90 millivolt, then what happens? If it only draws the potassium inside the cell, what happens is it will again make the inside of the cell more positive, right? So for every potassium it brings in, it again has to throw three sodium out, right? So if sodium potassium ATPase would only draw the potassium in to conserve the potassium inside the cell, then the cell would be more electropositive. But that is not what they were allotted to do. They were told to make the inside of the cell more negative and to maintain at minus 90 millivolt. That's the resting membrane potential, right? So, with the fear that when I put the potassium inside the cell, electropositive. So with that fear, the sodium potassium ATPase throws 3 sodium out for every 2 potassium it draws in. So now you see both of them have worked together to repolarize and to bring the resting membrane potential to minus 90 millivolt, right? But at the same time, even after the delayed rectified potassium channel stops, the more wider sodium potassium channel, the sodium potassium ATPase, keeps on drawing the potassium, and with a fear that if I draw more potassium in, it'll make the cell more electropositive. So with that fear, it throws out this sodium out, right? So now, even by drawing the positive charge inside, it is not letting the minus 90 millivolt to rise to minus 80 or minus 70 or even 0 or even to plus 10 or whatever. So even by drawing the positive charge in, by drawing the potassium inside the cell, the sodium potassium ATPase is not letting the cell inside of the cell to become more electropositive. So in gist, the sodium potassium is helping, ATPase is helping to maintain the resting membrane potential that is minus 90 millivolt. So now what's the moral of this story? So what's the moral of this story? The moral of the story is, it's funny, both of them, the delayed rectified potassium channel and the sodium potassium ATPase, both are working together for repolarization, right? And the next moral is, after helping in repolarization, sodium potassium ATPase is again helping the cell to maintain the minus 90 millivolt resting membrane potential. So then you see, whenever we hear about the sodium potassium ATPase, we just understand the chunk of the story, but the whole story is a little bit longer, right? We just knew that, maybe not all of them, some of them, and might have been thinking that the sodium potassium ATPase job was to bring the 2 potassium inside the cell and the sodium outside the cell, right? So, but the whole story, the secret behind the story is actually it is helping all along the repolarization phase. The sodium potassium ATPase is helping all along the repolarization phase, and again it is also helping in maintaining the resting membrane potential. So if it was not for the sodium potassium ATPase, then maybe the cell would have been more electropositive, or maybe the cell would not have been working as it was expected to work. So what is a condition where the sodium potassium ATPase is not working or cannot work, like in digoxin toxicity? So what's the function of digoxin? Digoxin actually, it blocks the sodium potassium ATPase, right? So when the sodium potassium ATPase in the body, it's a kind of enzyme that is present in almost all parts of all cells of the body. Trillions of cells have the sodium potassium ATPase, right? So if all the sodium potassium doesn't work, then many problems are going to happen. So this is some of the many secrets that sodium potassium ATPase has in that whole story. So this much in this video. We'll talk next interesting topic in next video. Thank you.